Hi, my name is Carlos Rodriguez, Sitecore Consultants with Arc Systems, and what I'm going to go through now is part two of performing A/B testing. Okay. As I go to the next slide, we did a part one where we focused on value versus traffic, how that leads to the development of goals in Sitecore, and we demonstrated how to create goals. This was important because when you perform a test, it's against the goals that you're performing the test against to see which variation of the site, when you do your test, actually achieves the goals most efficiently. So it was important to have this discussion about goals even before we got into testing. But now that we've covered that topic, we'll focus on the topic of testing in terms of the why, what the test cycle means, A/B versus multivariate testing. We'll talk about page testing, some other minor points about testing I want to make sure I mention, and then we should have enough time at the end of the video to actually demonstrate a page test. So I'm going to set one up and demonstrate how you kick one off. And then in the next video, part three, we'll actually focus more on creating, demonstrating, and analyzing the results of an A/B test. So that will be the part three video. So why do we test? Remember that these days, when it comes to websites are not just about conveying information anymore. They're often used, particularly where e-commerce is concerned, to perform some other activity which generates income for the organization. And particularly for where e-commerce is concerned, we're talking about buying products off the web. So we want to make sure that the type of site we throw out there makes the conversion rate of browsing the page to buying the product as quick and easy as possible, and as likely as possible. So sometimes what you got to do to figure out how likely that's going to happen is to actually conduct a test. The idea being that if you conduct these tests, you're actually accelerating your path to get to the place where you're getting the conversion rate where you want it, so that you're actually getting the return of investment of the use of your site in terms of getting those products bought. Now, in the first video, we talked about engagement value versus traffic because these days, it's not just about people showing up to your site anymore. While it's great to have a lot of traffic at your site, if that traffic doesn't convert into actual purchasing power, then the traffic is not that valuable. So the idea is not just to get a lot of people to show up to your site, but also to get them to do what you want them to do once they show up. So if you're selling a product, then the idea being that they buy your product once they show up to your site. You want to get that conversion rate as high as possible because it's only when they purchase the product that you actually get the income the organization needs to remain viable as an organization. So that's why in the first video we talked a lot about the difference between engagement value and traffic. So I do encourage you to watch that if you haven't watched it already, even before you go through this video. But if you have an understanding what we mean by this, then you will probably understand that the idea behind testing is to ensure that the version of the site we have out there increases that conversion rate from browsing the site to buying the product to be as high as possible. It can also be used to solve certain user experience and customer experience issues which you may not be aware of when you've developed and deployed the site. So another reason for testing could be to ensure that people are having a positive experience when they come to your site, and if there are problems with that experience, hopefully testing will, in some form or fashion, will point that out, and then you'll be able to optimize your site by improving those experiences. But in the end, the idea is to accelerate your path to conversion. Now, why would it accelerate it? Because if you can test two different variations side by side with that same traffic in that same period of time, you can find out which one leads to a better conversion for the products you're selling versus the one that's not leading to as high a conversion, because naturally you're going to go with the version of the site that gives you the higher conversion rate. Without the ability to test, you're sort of going with one version for a period of time, another version for the same period of time if I'm doing an equitable test, and then you're doing that analysis after the fact to see which one is actually optimized, and then you go with an optimized fashion. So the way I see it is that if you do this in the form of a test rather than going with one version one at a time, you can be cutting the optimization time period to as much as a half, since you could run the test against the two variations at the same time, two or more for that matter. So right now we're just showing you an example involving two, but you can involve as many variations as you need to make sure that you can determine the best variation for the conversion rate you're after and then put that one in place. Now, when it comes to testing, we do tend to describe this from the perspective of a cycle. Certainly, you do a test to test a variety of variations to see which one gets the conversion rate you're after. You determine which one has the proper conversion rate by doing the analysis afterwards. And then you optimize your site to reflect the version of the site which provides the best conversion rate for the purchasing that you're trying to get from your customers. Now, this tends to be cyclical because things change. The needs of your customers change, advancements in your products change. External forces can come into play and change. If you have, for instance, additional competitors, that may change what type of product you release or how you're advertised to your customers. So with that being the case, every so often you probably will be testing your site again to make sure that you actually have the best site out there in terms of getting your product sold. So if you test again, you have to analyze the results again, and then based on the optimization, change your site to reflect the best version that will get you what you're looking for in terms of a conversion rate. Okay, now there are multiple forms of testing that you can do with Sitecore specifically. There's A/B testing where you're only testing one variation to one component on a Sitecore page. Remember that a best practice of developing Sitecore pages is that you break it up into multiple components. This is not just done so that your authors can build the page relatively easily using these components as building blocks. We also encourage you to use the components because it flows very well into how Sitecore does analytics, including testing. So if your page is broken up into components, you can actually do a variation of a component by changing its data, for instance, to the use of its data source. And that would then lead to A/B testing, where you're just testing a change to one component by changing its content. However, if you want to try this with multiple components instead, that's when you get into multivariate testing, where you're testing variations in data on multiple components at the same time. If you do that, then the number of combinations is a multiple effect, where you would multiply variations of one component times another times the third times however many components you have. In this example, since we have about 4 variations per component, that would be 4 times 4 times 4, which is 64. So you would actually be testing against 64 variations of the exact same page. However, when it's just an A/B test, then the number of variations dictates the number of versions you're testing, which in this case would just be 3. You can also do page testing where, in essence, you're testing the entire page as opposed to a specific component. Okay. So while this different page, I should say, this page variation will most likely be based on changes to the component, you can do it more from a whole page perspective rather than just a particular component perspective. So in this case, I'm testing the orange page versus the teal page versus the purple page versus the blue page. So as a result, I'm testing 4 different combinations. So in this particular video, I plan to demonstrate launching a page test as opposed to the A/B testing version, which I'll actually do in the next video. So other things I want to mention about testing. Identify the sections you need to optimize. So in other words, don't just vary things for no particular reason. Think through what components on the page can be optimized to serve the purpose of increasing that conversion rate. And once you determine that, you always want to test with a hypothesis in place. So in other words, don't test just for the sake of testing, because among other reasons, you're impacting your live site when you're conducting a test. So with that being the case, first have a hypothesis for why you want to test, and then perform the test, and then certainly document your test results so you know what exactly worked for your test. So let's go ahead and do a demo, and what I'm going to focus on is page testing. So I'm going to go to my Sitecore environment. I'm going to go all the way out first so I can show you how I set up this page test if that's what I want to conduct. So what I'm going to do is log in, and then I'm going to go to Experience Optimization from the Sitecore Experience Platform Launchpad. Note that all the marketing applications are on the left, so if you're working as a marketer, you will have the ability to access these tools on the left. Experience Optimization is where I would go to conduct the page test. So I'll click on that tool. And note that to create a page test, I would just click on the button in the upper left corner. You can certainly look at other tests going on. For instance, if I go to draft page tests, I don't have any page tests. Yes, I'm going to create one. You can actually start a page test, and then if you're not ready to launch it, it'll save it as a draft. Active tests will show me my active tests, and I have 3 of them going on right now. And then once I have completed tests, I can see the results of those under historical tests, and suggest tests will be situations where Sitecore would actually suggest to me what tests I should conduct instead. I'm not sure if I have any, but I'll just go ahead and take a look. Oh, actually, I have quite a few. So these are tests they think I should perform to optimize the site. Okay, but I'm going to create one from scratch. So what I'm going to do is click on Create Page Test and try to kick one off. All right, I'll give it a moment. And here you would choose a particular test, or a particular page you want to test, I should say. So I'm going to my Orlando vacations, which I know pretty well because I live in Jacksonville, Florida. I go to Orlando quite a bit. So that's why I figured I would go with this as my example. The one thing I want to point out is if you're already conducting a test on a page, it will let you know that I can't conduct a page test on top of that. So if you're going to conduct a page test on a certain page, make sure you don't have an active test already running on it. So I'm going to choose SeaWorld as my example because I have 2 versions of this page. I want to test one against the other. So particularly if I have 2 different versions of the same page, I can use a page test to conduct a test against both variations. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Select. This is my version 2 page, which I think I have it open right now, so I'll show you what that looks like. Here's version 2. So in version 2, I'm highlighting the Kraken roller coaster that's currently at SeaWorld. I want to test this against version 1 where I'm highlighting Shamu. So it'll ask me what I want to test against. If I click on the plus sign down below, I can create a new page version. If I need to create that first before I test against it, I can use a previous page version, which is what I'm going to do, or go against another existing page. I'm going to go ahead and click on use previous page version. And once I give it a moment, let's see now what it should be. Did I choose version 1? Hold on. I might have to get rid of it. Use previous page version. I did that. This should be showing me version 1. Okay. Let me check something. Oh, there we go. All right. So what I was expecting to see here, and I'm sorry for the pause, was to see, oh, that is version 1. The images are so similar, I couldn't make out that that was Shamu. If I go to review and start, you'll then see version 1 and version 2. So if I click on the second version I'm comparing against, there you see Shamu if you look at it carefully enough. I had a hard time seeing it myself, so that go figure. I need my glasses. But version 1 has Shamu on it. Version 2 has the roller coaster on it. Okay, so before I start my test, I could indicate if I expect an increase or decrease in engagement value. I'm going to leave it about the same for now. I can indicate how many people, or not so much in number, but percentage, who will see this test. I'm going to have everyone be participating in the test, which means that they'll either get version 2 or they'll get version 1. Okay. The confidence level, I'm going to go with 95%, meaning that if this was running automatically, once I get it, I'm close to 95% winner. I'm going to go with that. Test objective should be the goal I want to test against. So in the first video, we talked about create goals. So if I created that goal, I can select the goal here. Booked vacation is my vacation booking goal. So that's the one I'm going to select. For my example, I'm going to choose manually select a winner because this is an unhosted site. It's hosted locally on my machine, but it's not hosted on the web. So in the end, I'll just select the winner manually. And then I can set a minimum and maximum for how long the test runs. So once all this is in place, what I can do is start the test. And then it's going to kick it off. Oops, let me see. Oh, I got some errors. Okay, I clicked on it more than once, so that was probably the error. Okay, so I'll just close this. I won't worry about it. I'm good. All right, so the test has started. So if I go back, it should now be an active test. And it is. Okay, so now If I look at this live, I should get one or the other. Let me minimize this a second. Okay, I'm running out of time. So in the next video, I'm actually going to show you the results of the test. And that should be it. See you guys at the next video.